Hey, Kiris, I have to wonder sometimes, and I really wonder if there is a distinction. I wonder if I'm a skeptic or a cynic. Because I was thinking back to the first time I ever really questioned my faith. I always felt like I had doubts. I can remember when I was real young and someone threw a plastic tarp over these kids, and I was sitting there trying to figure this out, and I was sitting with my parents, and they said, "Well, the moral of the story is God can see everything." I looked at my mom and I go, "Okay, that's a plastic tarp, but what if it was covered? How does God get through and figure that? That doesn't sound right." She goes, "Shh, okay, know when to be quiet because the adults will get mad." You know, I was clued in, but that was my first clue. But then I fell into more of the social organization of it. I tried to fit in, you know, get in to fit in, right? So I went along, and this was at a different church, and it was late at night, and it wasn't a service, it was a get together, a function. So we were all in there. I don't remember what the function was really about. Basically, the whole rundown of it was is that one of the pastors or ministers would get up, say a few enlightened things. There'd be some group prayer, and then everybody would just mingle and socialize, like a social club with a clause. Well, all of a sudden there was a panic, and not an out and out panic, but there was a commotion, and then it started to be a clamor, and then it started to be a panic. And everybody was going to look, and I wanted to go look, and I was innately curious. I've always been curious, but I've always wished I had the intellect to be a scientist or somebody who could be a researcher or something like that, because I was always had an inquisitive mind, just not a vast intellect to really follow it. Besides, I found out real science was pretty dull. So, I knew I didn't have the temperament for that. I wish I did. Um, so anyway, there was this big clamor, and I'm trying to get up there to see what's going on. Other people shied away. Other people just looked, got a quick glance, but I wanted to know. I had to see. So between maneuvering between people and, trying to avoid the person or responding politely to the person that's telling me to go back and just being compliant, and then stepping sideways until they lost track of me till I could maneuver to another position to actually get to where I wanted to go. I've always been stubborn like that. So I went up and I looked out, and I finally got up there and looked out. And what did I see? A big dumpster fire. And there's two of the big church big wigs. Not the ministers, but these Lutherans. But, some of the big blowhards, the friggin' congregation, right? So, so they're out there, and there's these two guys out there in this parking lot. See, it was an enclosed parking lot between the church and the congregation hall. And what was going on was there was a dumpster on fire. And these guys were cursing and stuff, and I couldn't really make out what they were cursing. And of course, these other guys are passive aggressively, these blowhards are passive aggressively, yelling back, "Oh, you get out of here! I'll friggin' call the police on you, and, blah, 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 you're filth, and all this stuff, right? Wanting to just swear and thump their chest and, yell back and stuff, you know, because, there is a pretty good dumpster fire going. And it was right then I didn't understand why they were so upset with us, but I knew it clicked with something inside me that was so unhappy where I was at. And I've never been one for counterculture. I'll be right honest about that. I was never raised that way. As a matter of fact, I was raised somewhat oppositely. Not in an economic conservative sense, but in a social sense, we were pretty moderate conservative in a way. Just not high class, but well, kind of middle class bumpkins, I guess. There was what was politely said, and then there was the real world. And if anybody's ever seen any of my posts or read some of my some of my freaking comments, it's pretty obvious what kind of upbringing I had. You know, the real story, supposedly. Anyway, no social progressive, hard social progressive liberal views. That's for sure. Anyhow, but I knew I wasn't happy with these people either, especially because I didn't have the money and I was from a dysfunctional family, so I couldn't really get any support from them. And in retrospect, I didn't really have the ability to offer any because I don't. Sometimes I wonder if they didn't know exactly what to do with me, if they shouldn't have had kids, or if I was a problem child. I relished being a problem child. I always had that curiosity, and maybe there's other issues. So just to be honest, but it woke me up to that, and from there, it was the point I silently started questioning my faith, or maybe not so silently. I tried to keep it a secret, but I think people caught on. When I started asking more difficult questions, found the good passages to read in the Bible, but it also made me feel guilty because I noticed some people in the atheist community, especially some people well received in the atheist community, or the secular community, should I really say, are very, are either agnostic or Christian, but they're very social progressive humanists. Or, I don't know what label you'd put, but they're definitely of the secular mindset. And, as a person who is a complete naturalist, of course, I have very extreme secular views also in science. And how I figured that relates into the real world. But anyway, but it woke me up to that, and I can't help but wonder as I look at other people, and I'm still not satisfied. Am I really a skeptic? Or am I just a cynic? Have I always been a cynic? Makes you wonder. Is your atheism skepticism or just cynicism? I don't know. Do you believe what you believe because you want the truth? Or do you believe what you believe because you're unsatisfied? And you want something to cling to that does satisfy you? Magic thinking? Anyway, that's my thought. Skeptic or cynic? What are you really? Me? I don't know. I know for sure. Well, I believe for sure. Well, I know it, but, you know, if you're the kind of person who wants to say they know something, you have to say you believe it because there's ways you can't prove it. And you can only disprove what claims are made. That would be methodological naturalism versus metaphysical naturalism. Some people say I won't reserve judgment until. Uh, I blew it. Oh well. I won't reserve judgment on what I can't prove. And I'm the kind of person that says I inherited the wind and there is no supernatural. I do not accept it in any context in the natural world, even though I can't prove it. And then a theist will come by and say, well, that's just your faith, isn't it, then? Well, maybe it is, because I've never been the type that's had a reason not to or not to rebel against the ideals of Christianity, just to be honest, but cannot accept the premise of any metaphysical machinations. Machinations, the supernatural can never be something that could be a real possibility to me. And I realized that. Well, I accepted it after a loss of a friend early in my youth. But I really began to realize it fully as time went on. So, skeptic or cynic? What are you? I don't know myself. But I know once you inherit the wind, you can't close your eyes again. Thank you. This is curious. Tell me, what are you?